Hey guys, and thanks for checking out this video. I am working in Photoshop today and wanted to share with you my favorite tools to just clean up the images and really give them a more refined look. I typically edit all of my images in Lightroom, and then often I do pull them into Photoshop. I know that for a lot of people, Photoshop is overwhelming or it's confusing or, oh, I just don't have the time to learn it. I'm here to tell you that you do have the time to learn these just little tips and tricks that can help kind of just overall clean up your images. Even if you outsource your images, it's just good to have these tools in your back pocket in case you have a rush order and you need to get something done quickly. I was taught in school how to go from point A to point B in the longest way possible. They wanted us to know the exact steps that you should take all along the way. And once I learned all of that and started applying it, in the real world to my business, I realized, wow, Photoshop, there's a lot of ways to get from point A to point B. And I just, I'm totally taking the shortcut on this because I don't have time to spend, doing it 100% by the book on 1,000 images. So I am here to share my tools with you, and they're quick and easy tips just to kind of be able to clean up an image, and I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I am here to answer and help out in any way possible. So let's get started. This first image, what I see when I'm looking at it is, yes, it's pretty much done, and honestly, it's deliverable to the client. It's to my level of par where I'm like, okay, this is great. But if number one thing that's really bothering me about it is this platform that they're on, because not that there's anything really too distracting about it. It's pretty good. It's mainly this portion that's driving me nuts. But I have a really quick and easy tool that I can use to kind of clean this up and make it just that much better. So the first thing that I do when I pull an image into Photoshop, excuse me, is I create a duplicate layer. And I do that by pressing Command J on my keyboard. Over here on the layers panel, you will see the background. You can double click this to make it editable if you want to. It's not locked anymore. But I always try not to touch this layer because I want to be able to toggle between my images to see my progress along the way. Because at the end of the day, even though I'm retouching this, I really want it to look the most natural as possible. When a viewer is looking at the image, I don't want them to sit there and go, oh, they photoshopped that, that, and that. I want them to think, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful image, and not be distracted by anything that, I did to it. So yeah, I'm going to always make sure that you're highlighted on the correct layer that you want to be working on. There are times where I've clicked on the wrong layer and I've been trying to edit the top and I'm like, I don't see my progress. What's happening? And it's only because it just wasn't highlighted in the correct one on the correct layer in the first place. So I click on layer 1. We're just going to zoom in here, and to clean this up, I'm going to use the patch tool. It's really quick and easy, but in my tools, you'll see it looks like a patch. They call it the patch tool. That's the one I'm going to be using, but if you kind of click and hold that little arrow, spot healing brush tool would work for this. Healing brush tool would work for this. It's just patch tool is something that's quick and easy and I enjoy. And I'll kind of toggle between the three for this just so you can kind of see. Some other scenarios that I would use these tools on would be blemishes. If, bride woke up with a big pimple in the middle of her forehead or something, I would definitely use the patch tool or one of the healing tools to quickly kind of go through and just touch it up a bit. Another thing could be exit signs. They are so ugly and distracting, or trash cans, and anything that's kind of doesn't have too much stuff around it, that can intrude on your retouch, the portion that you're retouching, that it's really easy to use these tools. So here we go. So I'm just going to jump in and start pulling them. So I just draw around the portion that I want to move, and then I move it to what I want it to copy. They do have other settings for this. For instance, up here you can patch, you can do content aware, and content aware does work pretty well. Let's try it out so I can show you. I mean, to be honest, I just don't really see a big difference. Only it just kind of depends on the scenario and the lighting situation and what you're actually retouching. So for these, I am just going to jump through, quickly draw them all out. I mean, this is my favorite thing about Photoshop. It's like magic. I love making things disappear. I'm also using a Wacom tablet. If you don't have one, I would say that you should get one if you plan on spending a lot of time in Photoshop, because it does make your life just so much easier. It's a personal preference. I just have found over the years that this is much easier than using a traditional mouse. And it's a hell of a lot easier than using a trackpad on a laptop. So I will always, I even take my Wacom tablet, like when I travel. It's thin, easy, compact, light, to be able just to throw it in a backpack or your suitcase on the road. And yeah, I mean, look at how much cleaner that's looking already. And no one will be any wiser. So yeah, I'm just gonna click through all these. I'm gonna try and speed this up even more. You always want like clean edges too. I've noticed that if I try to patch tool something that doesn't really have a clean edge, like watch this. This will work, but I'm gonna have to make sure that I follow the edge so that it looks natural. So that should work pretty well. But say for instance I didn't do that, I was like right on the edge, it might blur it a bit, and sometimes it can look messy. So just a couple things that you need to be cautious of. All right, so we're gonna back up, and then I'm gonna toggle on and off, and that's how I clean up that. And I probably would too spend a little bit more time in here, but just for the sake of your time, I won't do too much more. But when I'm pulling from here to here now, you're gonna notice, like, see that line? I wanna make sure that that line is lined up so that this line along here still stays authentic to the image itself. All right, then I'd say that image is done. Toggling on and off again for you to see a little bit more, and we're good. This image. So right off the bat, again, I could deliver this to the client. Nothing's really bothering me all that much about it. But if I look down here, these leaves are just oddly placed. This image was taken during the fall. There were leaves everywhere. We're in an environment where, you know, you just can't avoid them 100%. But I know that this can be a really quick and easy fix, so I'll pull it into Photoshop, Command J, create another layer, and I am just going to use the patch tool again to get rid of them. I'm even going to do some of these like really dark spots right here, just because I really don't want anything to distract from the couple. That's a light one. And then these, we're going to be, since this is along an edge, I'm going to try and keep it along the edge. And then, okay, now this looks like a duplicate, so now I'll pull from there and pull that away. Just because edges can be kind of tricky. So yeah, and we're gonna be like that. Perfect. Now, in this, I naturally probably wouldn't even think to come down here in the left corner. Oh, sorry. Come down here in the left corner and see this little like crack in the road. It won't typically bother me for this, but I just, for the sake of learning, I am going to show you the clone stamp tool. So this side is just beautiful straight line. This one's great except for it has this little blemish. So what I'm going to do is grab my clone stamp tool, which is this guy right here, clone stamp. And then I'm going to press Alt or Option, same key. And I am going to click on the line. And now I have it, I'm kind of right now I have copied what I want. You can kind of see as I drag it around. It's copied what I want for it to look like. So I'm actually going to just place it, kind of line up the line as close as possible. And I am going to paint in. And then now that I've hit that, it's like a little bump. I'm going to source again, grab the line again, come down, line it up, clean it up. Now when I back out, two perfectly straight lines. Don't even see that little crack in there. So yeah. All right, next up is this image of Jeff and Joanna's engagement session, and I'm gonna zoom in so I can see what I'm working with. And right off the bat, honestly, I think her hair looks nice and windblown. His does too. It seems really natural. Honestly, I could deliver this to the client and I'm sure she would be overjoyed. But one thing that would bother me personally if I were her is just this line across my forehead that, you know, is obviously a piece of hair, and I'm just kind of thinking of her and how she would feel seeing this. So because I'm sure that she would prefer not to have that hair going across there, I'm going to remove it. It's easy enough to remove. It'll take me a couple minutes. So yeah, just something to think about. After I dive into this, I will kind of address some of these flyaways, and that's really just for a teaching moment. I do think that really none of it's too distracting. It was a windy day, but just for the sense of teaching, I will go into that as well. But for starters, I'm going to make a duplicate layer, and I'm going to work with actually this kind of lighter thin area first because I don't like to work with too much real estate at once. I like to go slowly and kind of work up to make a bunch of small movements to work up to the big overall change. I'm pulling with this patch tool, and I'm going to try and line up her hair and the side of her face as close as possible just to try and keep it looking very natural. And there's also there's a thin dark hair here that's really kind of throwing me off as well. So I'm going to just adjust that, pull that down, look at my progress. So much cleaner, nicer. Perfect. And then I'm going to zoom in here. And so for teaching wise, one thing that I'm looking at is this one seems to be out of place a little bit, and so does this one. So the way that I approach flyaways is rather than try and just be I want to get rid of all of it and try and kind of circle it all and move it, it wouldn't work. It'd be a blurry mess. I like to work from end to end. So if a hair crosses it, I try to work from here to here, and that's really because I want it to look natural. I don't want hairs to have weird ends or just be by themselves. You'll see right now when I work with this. So I'm going to throw on my clone stamp tool for starters, and I'm going, because there's different tones back here, I'm going to try my best to work with the lines of it. So I am sticking, that's within the green kind of shadow, and then I'm going to work it down, and I'm going to pull it over, and then since that's an end right there, we're going to stop right there. I want to soften this line, so what I'm gonna do is create another duplicate layer. So right now I'm going to take my layer 1 and create another layer from that, and then I'm going to grab my patch tool, circle around just this portion that's kind of darker than the rest. And then there's also a couple hard lines in here. And then I'm going to move my opacity down a bit to blend it. And then, yeah, so let's look at that. So if we back out from here, you can kind of see, if you're looking right here at this area, I'm toggling this the layer's off, so that's like that hard green line that I had, and then how I softened it a bit. And then you can also see there are those hairs that are just kind of poking out, really kind of like antennas almost. We are getting rid of those. So if I wanted to spend more time in this, I would go through and I would kind of, do this one. And then once this portion's done from A to B, I would take that and maybe try to lower that. And then I would do this line as well. Any kind of the ends to just kind of pull them in and so it doesn't look so chaotic. One other thing that I know that women tend to think about as well is, everyone wears makeup and there is like kind of this lighter patch right in here. So what I would do is create a new layer, because whenever I move on, so say for instance, we were just working on forehead, then I would switch to hair, and then we work on the hair, and then I'd switch to, so that would be another layer. Then the next layer would do is, okay, I want to work on maybe emphasizing her eyebrows or her hairline, things like that. So now that gets its own layer as well. So Command J again. And also if you like double click over here where it says layer 1 copy, layer 1 copy 2, you can rename these by double clicking and then typing in what you would like them to be named. Since we're going to go through this as quickly as possible, I'm just going to leave them for the time being. Okay, so since we're already here, what I'm going to do is, so I create a new layer. Now, since I want to clean up this spot right here, really by clean up, really I just want to darken it a bit for her hair. I'm going to go down here to the very bottom right next to the trash can. There is a new layer tab. So we're going to click on create a new layer. This is going to be open. We're going to change this to soft light. Then we're going to go to edit. Up in the left hand corner, fill. We're going to fill this layer with 50% gray, and your mode is going to be soft light. And then I'm going to pull up the brush tool. So if you just hit B on your keyboard, a brush will pop up, and I'm going to use my brackets again to adjust my sizes, and then I'm going to zoom in on her face even more. And what I want to do is make my brush over here. If you go to the tools panel, you see a white square and a black square. I'm just going to use the little arrows to toggle. I'm going to go to black. I'm going to go up here to my opacity and leave it at 100, but my flow, this is going to be how much ink is going through your pen, essentially. I'm going to pull that down to like 13. I try to stick anywhere from 10 to 20 in that range, and you'll see why. So I'm just going to kind of, now I'm brushing in her hair, and I want to go in the direction of her hair so that it doesn't look like a weird sloppy mess. Like it's going to blend much more easily if I am going in the direction of her natural hair. We're just going to kind of keep blending a little bit. And then because I really want to emphasize the shape of her face as well, I'm going to just kind of darken her hairline in here. And then you can even use this to kind of help darken like the chin, the shape of her jaw and her chin. And then I want to work on her, and I know it might look messy and scary right now, but don't worry about it. It will blend in a second. So now I'm going to just kind of emphasize her eyebrows. And I didn't do this for all of her images, but since we're here and we're talking about my favorite tools, these are some things that I like to do. Darken her eyeliner. Perfect. And then I'm going to press Command and then the minus sign on my keyboard just to zoom out a little bit. See what I did here a little bit. You can kind of see the darkening. Perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and this is going to show me what I painted. If I like go all the way to the left, it's the hardest. Like that's the full extent of what I drew essentially. And what I'm going to do now is pull it up to, let's try 7. See how it's going to just softly kind of blur around a bit? I might even make it a little harder. So you can kind of toggle on and off the preview. I don't want any of these like harsh lines. So that's what I'm really looking for. So if I press OK and back out a little bit, you can see what I did here. Kind of darken her hairline a bit, her eyebrows. Just kind of gives her a little bit more shape, especially down here on her chin. And to be honest, I would probably even blur this a little bit more, or I could take my opacity now and maybe drop it down to 50%. It's all a personal preference too. I just try to make it as natural and subtle as possible. Yeah, so I think 50% is pretty natural. I'm going to back out. If I press Shift Option Command E, this will take everything that I was working on below layer. Now you can see layer 3. I'm looking at my layers panel. This will take everything below layer 3, everything that I did to it, and put it on one layer. So now I can unlock all of these. So now I'm not seeing those. This allows me to toggle on and off between the original, which is this that you see on your screen, to what I did. And I'll zoom in on her face a little bit more so you can kind of get a better view. So before, after, before, after, before, after. All right. And next up. All right, so our next image that we're going to be working on is this one. It was taken in Santa Monica. And obviously Santa Monica, really public place. There's bound to be people in the background or trash cans, which is like this weird brown blob back here. And then they had construction over here. But to be honest, the construction in the background to the right really doesn't bother me. So I'm not even going to work on that. What bothers me is just like these weird blurred out people. So to start, Command J. And I'm going to use my brackets to make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm going to switch to my clone stamp tool. I'm going to use clone stamp to start. Actually, I lie. I'm going to use the patch tool to start. This line right here is the natural line of the horizon. And so I'm going to try and keep this as straight as possible, or at least as natural as possible. There is like slight dips in it because it's sand. And the reason for that is because I don't want it to look unnatural. I don't want to move the line at all or have weird empty spaces that shouldn't be there. So yeah, I'm just going to try and remove these people now. So I'm going to give the object a little bit of space. I find that it does allow the patch to just kind of do its job a little bit more cleanly. And then I'm going to click and hold, pull it over, and line up that line as easy as possible. Done. That is awesome. So much better already. Oh, ignore that. So much better already. Okay, so next up is going to be this trash can. And I'm also trying to be aware of like these light spots and things like that. So moving it directly from where it's at to the left is going to bring in some of these light spots. So what I think would actually be more natural is if I took it, so I'm going to click and hold, and pull it all the way down to more of this empty space. Let's see what that looks like. The tone might be different. Nope, looks awesome. All right, perfect. And some of these too are going to be trial and error. If you pull it to a space that you're like, okay, that really didn't work. Oh my gosh, what do I do? Just Command Z and try it again. So I'm going to click down here. I'm going to pull this over to more of a full spot with no light coming through. Click and release. Perfect. And then I just have this one more person right here. Gonna outline her a bit, giving her some space. And then this one I can pull over to right about there. Click and release. Perfect. And then we're gonna zoom out. All right, so final step is just kind of check back and forth. Yes, we like what it's cleaned up. Kind of look around, is there anything else? There is one thing that's kind of bothering me, and it's like drawing my eye away from the couple itself, which is obviously more important than this white blob. So I'm going to do my patch tool, work around it, move, try and line up those lines a bit, and I'm trying to look at each level of those lines. Click and release. Let's see what that did. Looks pretty good. And then we're gonna back up from there, toggle through, and now I'd say that's done. So yeah, so we kind of went through the clone stamp tool, the healing brush tool, spot healing tool, and the patch tool. The patch tool is definitely my favorite. It's what I think is the most versatile. But then also just remember, if you're trying to remove polka dots or something like that, you can also use the spot healing tool or the healing brush, which is just kind of click and easy, and yeah, go from there. But play around with it, see what works best for you, and if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to list my email down below in the description, and if you have any questions, just reach out and we can go from there. Thanks, can't wait to see what you create.